Hello again. Let's find out during the panel discussion why deep tech startups are worth investing in. And let me introduce you the speakers. Martin Goroško from Technopole Scale-Up Champions, Jakob Mikkel Hansen, mentor and investor from Scale-Up Champions, Inga, mentor, Scale-Up Champions, Maciej Małysz, general partner at Innovo Venture Partners, Koziarska, managing partner at SMOK Ventures, and Dr. Marcus Erken, funding partner at Sunfish Partners. And I have an overview of the discussion drafted here, but I think you're all looking forward to listening to the panel itself. So yeah, let's go, let's start, enjoy the panel.
So I guess we are live, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Martin Goroško, and I'm the head of business development at Tallinn Science Park Technopole, Estonia. Besides that, I've been angel investing. Recently, I have a small micro portfolio of young companies, and I'm really enthusiastic about deep tech and companies practicing deep technologies. And today I'm going to be the moderator of the afternoon session for the Scale-Up Champions Demo Day number 2. And we are going to elaborate a bit more on the topic why deep tech startups are worth investing in. Because the Scale-Up Champion projects, it's mostly about deep tech companies, and it's mostly about helping them to scale up through the investments and through the close cooperation with corporates. So I guess this topic is going to be top on for all the startups participating. And also, I hope it's going to be pretty challenging for the panelists today as well. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce the panelists tonight, and I'm extremely glad that we have field top experts here. I'm especially proud of that we have a huge representation of the VC funds, who also take on the investments to the deep tech sector. So I guess the discussion that we're going to have is going to be very, very fruitful. So first of all, I'm glad to say hello to Tiana Koziarska, who is the managing partner at SMOK Ventures. Hi, Tiana, can you hear us?
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Hello. Second, we have Jakob Mikkel Hansen, who is the Scale-Up Champions Program Mentor. Hello, Jakob.
Hello, everyone. And as well,
pleasure to have you here.
I'm a partner at a deep tech VC firm as well, just to
okay.
add that.
Sounds cool, because all I have here is that you are the mentor here, but it's good to know that you're also handling investments. Thirdly, I have here Dr. Marcus Erken, who is the founding partner at Sunfish Partners Venture Capital. Hello, Marcus. Can you hear us?
Hi, everyone. Very excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. Then we have Inga, who is the Scale-Up Champions Program Mentor. Hi, Inga.
Hello, and I'm also an advisor, a consultant to a couple of VC investors investing in startups, not necessarily deep tech, but generally in the area of strategic marketing. Okay,
thank you.
Pleased to be there. Yeah.
And last but not least, I'm sorry for the pronunciation, but I'm really proud to present Maciej Małysz, right?
Close enough. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a great afternoon.
Hi, Maciej. And Maciej is the general partner of Innovo Venture Partners, again, representing the VC. So just to kickstart our small discussion here, I would just to lay down some ground rules. We are going to have a pretty open discussion. And meanwhile, if you happen to have any questions, then feel free to ask them through the chat. Those questions will be delivered to us, and we are very glad to take on the questions from the audience as well. But meanwhile, I'm just going to kick off the discussion here, and I'm going to maybe start off with the very short introduction of the panelists. So can you please introduce yourself and say what you do and what is your link to the deep tech startups, and are you specifically working with the deep tech sector, or you are just like investing and mentoring and coaching all the startups around, or do you have like some deeper like understandings and knowledge and maybe even enthusiasm on deep tech companies? So let's start off with Diana.
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone. Maybe I can start that I'm originally an engineer, so this is also my connection to deep tech. I'm a physicist, and I'm a physicist turned founder of acceleration program turned VC. And right now at SMOK we are investing at very early stage, so pre-seed, seed investments into early stage companies. We don't focus just on deep tech. We invest in software and gaming companies. We do have deep tech investments, which I will talk in the panel later on more into detail, and that's shortly about us.
Okay, cool.
Oh,
Jakob,
and
what about
we
you?
generally help all of the founders, kind of, so we don't specify.
Okay. Jakob, what about you? What is your passion on or what is your experience on deep tech startups?
I mean, first of all, I came as an entrepreneur with a financial background, and therefore early in the days, primarily around blockchain and let's call it a bit more AI machine learning, were fascinated about the potential I actually could do, solve some tremendous things, spent quite a lot of time in the fintech industry, consumer-oriented, and saw this emerging technology who could actually have the opportunity to solve something like really huge. So got quite interesting in it. Did some consulting tasks with some partners from the States, and a couple of years ago, they've been in the research field for many years. I mean, they're teaching at universities on this topic, and as well just being part of the community early, especially in the blockchain and Web 3.0. When I joined more as a finance, let's call it person. So what we do at Warburg Service Investment is we're trying to treat ourselves as entrepreneurs. So we do our own research. We even develop our own due diligence tool, our KYC, AML, try to be very curious about it. And that's kind of our approach to deal flow as well, is being out in the ecosystem, being part of different things, and actually trying to develop and always be curious. So from our investment perspective, we're investing into, since there's a long time to the market. So we invest in interesting people who are trying to solve something great, like a huge problem we have out there. So again, we're located in the States and Europe. We do a little bit in Asia as well. But our approach to investing is being curious, try to figure out, be interested all the time and meet amazing people. And then down the road, we invest in the great people that we meet.
Okay, great. I'm really excited to hear afterwards about the methodology that you have developed in distinguishing those companies. But we'll move to that later, I guess. So, Markus, what about you? Are you passionate about deep tech startups and what do you do?
Yeah, I really am. And deep tech actually has been in our tagline since the start of the fund. I mean, we literally call ourselves an early stage VC that invests in Polish deep tech startups. So all the investments we make at Sunfish are what we consider to be deep tech. So I have the great pleasure of engaging with deep tech founders on a daily basis. And for us, it's always early stage, meaning normally the first 500,000 euros in a team. And it's always very technical founders, and it's always B2B topics. And the starting point of the journey is always Poland. Although when you do deep tech and business to business, I mean, the audience normally tends to be quite global from day one.
Okay, glad to hear. Inga, you briefly mentioned what you are doing right now. So please elaborate more on the link that you have with deep tech startups.
I think I said pretty much all of it, but I've been in the mentoring and consulting business, especially for the startups, for about 30 years already. I started very early with the very early years of the independent Lithuania, where I went through all the bad guy stuff through to, wild capitalism, and now through to knowledge economy. So, I've been to all of these stages. So I've got a certain sort of strategic development perspective, but my main areas are strategic marketing and any sort of creative stuff related to relating a value proposition to the market. But I'm not only working with deep tech companies, I also work with very low tech. and shallow tech companies. And sometimes I find it very difficult to differentiate, which is exactly where. It depends on how you look on that. But I also have been a consultant to several investment companies on some of the projects where some specific knowledge was required when doing the due diligence as far as relationship to the market was regarded. So I consider myself a strategic marketing person. So anything that we can discuss related to the market and the deep tech potential in the market is, I believe, my area.
Absolutely. I think you have like valuable experience seeing all the transformation happening. So potentially you can pretty well distinguish what is the team.
Nothing can scare me. Nothing can scare me.
Absolutely.
I've seen it all. Okay.
Thank you. So Maciej, what about you? So Innovo Venture Partners, are you focused at deep tech or are you doing several other investments as well?
Okay, so we are an early stage fund that is not focused solely on deep tech, though this is a domain in which on which I focus within our fund. So we are a 54 million euro early stage fund doing first tickets between 500,000 to 1.5 million euros, and we would talk with shallow tech and deep tech companies. I myself, I try to help. Usually developers turned founders to build a company that makes a dent in a universe with VC money. So this is the profile I usually work with, and I have a couple of companies that could qualify, or would probably qualify as deep tech investments as well, and always happy to look at new opportunities in this space.
Okay, cool. So let's dig deeper into this definition of deep tech maybe. So Scale Up Champions project, it's as I mentioned, it's mostly about supporting deep tech companies to scale up, and doing that through the investments or doing that through the collaboration with corporates and larger companies. So we are having pretty hard time to make distinction between the deep tech and shallow tech companies, and the characteristics that we consider there might be a bit different. So for instance, for me, deep tech kind of represents the strategy of the startup company that want to scale up or go to global markets through their technology, not purely with their business model, but they have the competitive edge that is very much related to the technology or the IP that the company is holding. I just want to get your perspective, how are you distinguishing those companies and how are you actually separating them from the rest of the herd? How are you validating whether the company is the deep tech or not? So maybe Jakob, let's start off with you.
Yeah, I think it's quite an easy question because deep tech is technology. I've been in the space for many years, even as an advisor, where I was helping out startups, and there's different hypes going around. So if are they really developing something technology? Are they just using AI, machine learning, or blockchain as a marketing stunt? I think it's quite easy if you talk to someone after 10 or 15 minutes that they're actually working with the technology. And I'm not stating it's a bad thing to utilize technologies like AI, machine learning, but that's often to optimize. That's not to do a game changer in it. And the way we distinguish between it is that the technology can enable new business models. That's what we're really excited about. It can open up new markets. So in our perspective, it's fine to use AI machine learning to optimize, but then the discussion, are you a deep tech company or you're just a great technology company who are utilizing new technology? So we really try to look into the technology, into the people. Do they understand it? We're a small firm, but we've got developer hires. One of the founding partners have a development background. They're just publishing their new book. We are into the technology. I'm the finance guy, but they're into technology. So for us, the distinguisher is, are you actually working? Could you, one of our due diligence question, could you actually create the company without that technology? That's one of our initial questions. So the way we're trying to distinguish is that, is it the technology that's the thing, or are you just optimizing a great business model with new technology, which is not, it's not a bad thing. So we can even invest in a tech company. We don't care, but that's the way we kind of look into it.
So basically, you're like validating whether this company or business model can be pulled off without mentioning the words blockchain and AI and machine learning, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it, I mean, as a VC, and I think as being, I mean, I was a student as well and did my first company at university. I never understood the VC guys, right? I thought they were kind of arrogant and basics. You don't have the matrix, you need to have 10x, you need to have 20x. Now I kind of get it, because you're investing into very high risk. So when you're investing into a company, it needs to be 10x, because a lot of them is going to fail. So when you're looking into just optimizing existing business model with a technology, the growth rate is often not 10x, right? It's still a good business, still a really good business. But that's why we tend to look into can the technology, because the technology can be a game changer and create the 100x.
Absolutely.
Again,
Diana, what about? Oh, sorry. You want?
No, I just want to. I mean, to make it very, very clear, we don't. I mean, if you're deep tech startup or what you are, that's not the different for us, right? You don't need to be one of those circles, but that's the way if you need to distinguish it.
Okay, Diana, how are you separating deep tech companies from the rest of the companies? Do you have any specific criteria for them set up?
Well, I think I agree with Jakob, what Jakob said. I would say that for me, like, it's when you tackle challenges with technology, so like engineering challenges which have not been, they don't have solutions yet. So, you know, when you do due diligence of the startup, if you want to invest or not, there are some different challenges that you tackle, and risks that you have to observe in the startup. So if the risk is the technology, so if the risk is that, you know, they are developing technology, but they don't know if they will succeed. So when the technology is a risk, I would say this is more for me a deep tech startup.
Okay, sounds good. Marcus, what about you? Do you find that deep tech companies are the companies that should have like some technological advancements in there or technological competitive edge on the competition, or how are you distinguishing them?
Yeah, let me give you my definition first and then one comment. My definition is it's a team that's overcoming significant technological or scientific challenges to be solving a big problem. And I think the solving a big problem, that's the important part. In a perfect world, we wouldn't need deep tech startups. Again, like deep tech is very hard. It's much more risky. It's harder to finance, to do everything, right? I mean, if big problems, all of them could be solved without deep tech, then please do it in the easiest way possible. However, we believe that there are certain topics which can only, at least in 2021, be solved with complex technology or with complex scientific advancements. And that's sort of what we focus on. And that's why I think what Jakob mentioned earlier, I think it's such a brilliant question, sort of like if it can be solved without a tricky technology. I mean, technology is a means to an end. Right? It's not the end goal. The end goal is to be solving some problem for the end customer, the world, whoever. And if this can, and we should always pick the most straightforward way. But in certain situations, that's our focus. This can only be done, which we believe, with very advanced technologies and all the baggage that comes with it. And that's sort of like what we want to focus on and support the founders in.
Okay, yeah, it's kind of reasonable to believe so, and I kind of share your opinion on that. So, Maciej, what about you? Do you have any specific like preferences on deep tech sector or companies, and how are you distinguishing them? Do they like represent you as a specific sector, or are you like looking at them as a like the rest of the companies?
Being very frank, we're looking at it usually as at the rest of the companies, and I will tell you why, and it all fits perfectly with what the others said. Like, we believe that to build a business you need a product, and the deep tech is a technology behind product. So the first thing, like, if you're trying to figure out, okay, so what product are you building? Like, what problem, like what big problem are you trying to solve? And then if the optimal way is to use, you know, complicated technology, or maybe it's the only way to solve it, then fine. And how to define, like, so for me, distinguishing between deep tech, like what's exactly deep tech, is not super crucial. It's about how you decide to build the backend that is able to solve a real life issue. And then if I had to choose, like, among my portfolio, which are deep tech and which are not, I would say the ones that do real R&D, meaning where there is a real risk and there is creation of something new that hasn't been done already, that you can't use, like 10 libraries out of GitHub to solve the same issue, but you really need to put an effort and do a real R&D, and there is some scientific, let's say, breakthrough with it, then you have a deep tech, because it's really the technology that you are using is much more complicated than what you would consider a status quo taking from the market.
Are you considering IP protection as well as one criteria there?
For us, it's non-critical, although we see that the companies that are stemming from the deep tech world tend to care about that, more. Like, I think, like, at least for us, I think that if you develop something internally, it's important that it is yours, that you've created it. But then protecting IP within software is very tricky. And usually it's not a key determinant that are, like, at least in our experience, or in my experience, it's not the key differentiator between the ones that succeeded or the ones that haven't. I've seen tons of companies that applied for patents and, or whatever other IP protection they could think of, but ultimately failed as a business. And we, on our side, we are understanding all the characteristics of deep tech world, meaning the time needed to build a solution and how it's, perfected over time. We are still very much focused on building a big business out of that ultimately. So, and I don't think that IP protection, at least at the early stage, is something that is, the critical thing for us.
Totally agree with you. So great investments decisions, they normally happen if there is a perfect match between the team, the product, and the market. Like the team is awesome, they know how to enter a market, they have the deep understanding about the market, and they have awesome product which solves all the problems. If we are considering now the deep tech companies, and you mentioned basically all mentioned that the technology plays a significant role there. Like, if you consider deep tech startups that are now about to fundraise, do you think that the technology is something that is worth as or more than good team or decent market size? Or how are you approaching and validating the technology or the product that the company has? I'm going to ask this question from Inga, because you mentioned that you have worked with very many companies and potentially you have supported them in getting the investment readiness. And I just want to get your impression, whether if the technology is awesome and if the team has sacrificed a lot and built the awesome product, but they are not too good in market understanding and the team composition is not spot on as well. Can we make allowances there? And are the VCs actually or investors willing to still take the risks because of awesome technology?
There have been many questions in this one, right? I don't know where do you put emphasis. I believe you've put emphasis on a team. So obviously, team is important. But you can only know the potential of a team if you spend some time working with them. Right. So then one might say that, people can be employed. So it doesn't matter much what sort of team do we have, because, we can employ extra people. Yes and no. And then whom do you employ? And obviously myself being the marketing strategist, I usually lack that sense of marketing. I consider marketing being the core function of any organization, deep tech or less deep. But you are potentially as profitable as a company as you can get close to the market or find the market potential, and especially the create the value, which would be unsurpassable. And obviously that's everything. All your success is in the market. So probably marketing expertise is what I would be looking at firsthand. But also, when we talk about deep tech, I sometimes use the term hard tech because, hard rock, or I don't know, hard metal, or heavy metal, right? So sort of heavy tech. So when we talk about really heavy tech companies, I believe that we are talking about companies that are working with nascent or even non-existing markets, which actually means that there's not much to be researched, and most probably the problems that you're going to solve are not that obvious. And maybe you first have to find the problems, or even maybe to an extent create or uncover the problems that the markets have not been familiar yet themselves. So it depends on the level of the deepness of the tech that we are talking about. You might be looking for a potential in the market in order to satisfy the needs or to solve the problems, but maybe you are solving problems that are there to come, or maybe you are solving problems that nobody is able to see yet, and that would be a real sort of hardcore tech.
Okay.
I don't know whether I answered your question, but yes, having someone in the area of marketing on your team would be essential.
So basically, you value marketing and good market knowledge over the technology, right?
Well, not necessarily. Of course, if you haven't got ideas in the area of technology, what are you marketing? Though obviously, we have that is the category of companies which are called sort of the brand companies. You don't have anything but the brand. So actually, marketing can sell thin air. But when we talk about deep tech or hardcore tech or anything like that, obviously you have to have some substance. And when I think of the really deep tech, sort of hardcore deep tech companies, I think of them as some sort of science and technology vanguard. Someone going ahead of everything. And obviously, if you can spot some areas that others are not yet working on, or maybe if you go that deep into any sort of specific technologies that nobody else is yet looking at, that is extremely interesting. But again, this is just the scale of complexity or the scale of the deepness of the tech that we are talking about.
Okay, sounds good.
Can I add one comment?
Yeah,
comment
absolutely.
to this? Because I'd actually think, at least from my experience, the market understanding isn't very high of the startups in the deep tech space. If I work with the teams in the very beginning, that's actually one of the core jobs or the core bets that we place if we try to pick founders very early on, sort of like to get them to the next round where we co-invest again, but where there's validation by other investors. And I think the main reason for this is because it's much harder to understand the market. I mean, we want to make sure they clearly understand that specific problem, right? But given there is much more uncertainty, it's much harder for the founders to be speaking about the market in concrete terms. In addition, it's also a self-selection bias. The ones who tend to be really good at solving deep technical issues aren't generally the ones with business backgrounds who enjoy thinking about the market, who are qualified about thinking about the market, who sort of like think business models first. So I think in most cases, sort of like we want to know those people are really understanding the problem they're solving, sort of like Ether Biomedical. They really understand that bionics are very important and that in the future reading EMG data is going to be super powerful. But at the time of investment, I think sort of like really segmenting the market, understanding it, who exactly is our customer, sort of like who pays us, who sort of like has to start working with us, how do we convince them, how do we build up a sales funnel? I think all of this is still extremely vague at the very early stage where we tend to invest, and mastering this, which for instance in the Ether case worked out, that this is what happens like a year or two later when there's the next round and hopefully we have more to show for.
Okay, Diana, I know.
Short thought to what Marcus said.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I think that this is a very important point, and something that we see a lot, and maybe I'm a little bit later in the development phase of an average company, but we still see a lot of people who completely disregard the market. And I think that technology in itself, like, sorry to say it, but from my perspective, is worth nothing. Like we see sometimes people who are so enthusiastic about solving a tough technical issue that they forget that there is this business aspect to that. And it doesn't need to be, you know, super clear that you have target persona to which you sell, but at least being conscious that you are operating in some kind of market and there is some kind of opportunity or business issue or maybe health issue that you are solving with your technology. You are not solving the problem only for the sake of solving the problem. Is a key, you know, it's a key distinction on that. And I think I see a lot of companies that think, okay, we have technology, all the other stuff doesn't matter, and this is just not true.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I can agree with Maciej on that, because I think this is one of the mistakes we see in the tech startups. Being an engineer myself, I can say that, because as you said before, that technology is usually not the end goal, but the problem is sometimes with the tech people that for them the technology is the end goal because they are fascinated by that. So that's why I think like creating, like merging tech people and business people is the important part of creating successful businesses in this area.
Okay, Jakob, you had a comment as well?
Yeah, I just want to add a comment. I think it's important to distinguish what stage of the company. And right now we're talking to, I mean, you're in universities. This is maybe your first, second round. I mean, in a VC perspective, I mean, we have an idea, at least at our firm, we have an idea of what technology we believe in. And that's kind of our belief, and we may be wrong. And with those technologies that we think are emerging, we think there are new business opportunities, a new market coming that you maybe haven't seen before. So when we talk about like market, product, and team, we look at product as a technology. So we're really interesting in people. They don't need to understand exactly how they can commercialize this yet, if this is a technology we believe in. And then we try to work with the company, say, okay, this is a technology, that's this potential market, and then at the end of the day, what we're looking at is this the right team. But I think it's really important to state that, I mean, no one have all three at the same time. I mean, that's once in a lifetime that you see it. So I think as well as being out there and pitching and trying to convince VCs, I mean, if they're drilling down on the market or the technology, I mean, for us, we want to understand their vision. We want to understand where it's heading. I mean, things are changing all the time. So I think it's important to state it's three really important things. But I mean, from a team perspective, do you have the right engineer? Perfect. You can always hire a biz dev. I mean, I used to be a CFO. I'm a commodity. I mean, at the end of the day, you can just hire someone else. I'm not important at all, right? So I think it's important to state that, I mean, no one's going to have all those three things. We try to decide in the specific case which one we think is most important, like the T-shape. And then we try to, as Marcus is stating, trying to help out, being proactive and try to help out. Because if you're a really good startup, I mean, you need to allow us to be part of the round, right? So I think that's as well really important from a VC perspective. I mean, we should be lucky if you allowed us to invest in a great idea. So we as well, we don't care if you have things that you are lacking. At least you're just honest about it, then we can work around it and work together. So it's just stating there's a lot of matrix, there's a lot of different things out there. We have like 250 different things we go through a due diligence, but at the end of the day, it's do we feel the team and the technology can reach it? I think we can solve the rest, hopefully.
That is nice. I guess, Jakob, you're going to have like a huge communication traffic from the scale-up champion team. So they all want to get your perspective on their ideas. But anyways, let's move on. So I just want to now discuss more about how the deep tech startups are evolving, and probably we have like distinguished that yes, the technology is a bit more difficult in those cases. It takes longer time to enter the market. Those companies potentially need like a larger amount of investments in order to get market readiness and in order to actually penetrate those markets and have the global impact. The acquisition cost is higher, and it takes basically more time to see these 10x kind of returns from those companies. And I just want to get the perspective from the VC funds. Normally the duration of the fund, it's something between 10 to maybe 12, 13 years. And if you are now considering those deep tech investments in very early stages, you're potentially going to need to extend the fund tremendously in order to see those companies actually succeeding, in order to reach those exits and so on. So do you have any like different strategy and investment approach of the tech sector? And if yes, then can you elaborate a bit on that? So we can start off with Diana maybe.
Yeah, sure. So our fund also is like, our fund is has a lifelong of 8 years. So we cannot like make it longer for any deep tech companies. But what we actually do, because we engage in the companies at a very early stage, so pre-seed seed investments, we try to be the first investor in the company. So what we can see is, what we can do is we help the companies. We actually right now we are closing one deep tech investment. They are launched to the market. So this is very early stage. We don't know what's going to happen with the company and with the market. But what we can see we can do with the company is help them raise the next funding and help them grow the value of the company. So in those 7 years, they will hopefully be at Series A, B, and further, and we can exit at that moment to the later stage investor or something like that.
Okay. Any other comments on that? Do you have like different strategies on that? So Jakob, you are holding up.
I think maybe just to add something very high level. I mean, from an investment perspective, revenue is not, of course, revenue is good, but it can take a long time if you're deep tech. So like a simple thing as well, if you're talking to VCs, I mean, if we can see that if you reach X, Y, Z, then you can raise more capital. That's an important part of it as well, because often the question that you hear or founders hear is that you're missing traction, or your lifetime value of your customer doesn't look well. I mean, another thing from an investment perspective is that if let's say it's an R&D project and you're off with a half year, do you have not enough runway? So I think one of the aspects, at least for deep tech company, that they should be aware of is just, I mean, showcase that you got a route to more capital, which can be public. It can be public R&D. There's a lot of European-based initiative programs. So I think it's an important thing to add as well. If there's a long way to revenue, showcase as well when you're talking to VCs that you understand there's a long road. You understand that you can be delayed 1 to 2 years. What's your backup plan? How can you secure capital? It's just, I mean, that's one of the things to mitigate the challenging of being a deep tech, where a product launch is normally can be postponed with 6 months, and that's not even a long time.
Okay, Marcus, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, 10x is not enough. I mean, basic business, sort of like risk and reward go hand in hand, like it or not. And if something is more risky, if something takes longer on average, then the return potentially has to be bigger. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense, no matter what I believe as a human being, but we have investors too, as a fund, sort of like for our business model to make sense. And let's also sort of like be critical of us as VCs, sort of like, is it smart to be a deep tech VC? I'm not sure, because I mean, if you look at performance, sort of like market by far is the biggest driver. I mean, in combination with the team, obviously, but like market is the biggest driver for which startups perform and subsequently which funds perform. Sort of like, so, and as I outlined earlier, sort of like market is sort of like where we're the most shaky. And that's, by the way, why I think that there's a big mismatch between using the sexy word deep tech, both as a startup and as a VC, sort of like for marketing purposes, or actually wanting to do this in a significant way. Because if you do it, I do think you have to sort of like adjust a couple assumptions here and there. And don't get me wrong, I'm very happy with the way we're choosing. But I don't think it's obvious, unless for a mere marketing standpoint, that it's the smart decision to go the deep tech route as a startup or as a VC. That's why I think it only makes sense if there aren't alternatives to this, right? And we just happen, I'm not saying it's better or worse, but we just happen to care about some problems at Sunfish that we believe can only be solved by deep tech, or best be solved by deep tech. And we happen to enjoy working with founders who are passionate about those same topics. But I'm not sure this is on average a winning strategy for VCs or startups.
Okay, Marcus, just a quick question to you. Like, can you like elaborate more on what is your like sweet spot investment stage when it comes to deep tech companies? Like, what is the maturity stage that you expect the companies to have in order to be entering in your like screening radar?
Yes. So normally for us, I mean, every deal differs, but the average deal is going to be normally 2 or 3 co-founders. Most of them are either straight or university or have concluded their medical training. I mean, most of them sort of like have PhDs or are doing their research in certain ways and are, which we think, clearly understanding a problem and like do want to sort of like turn their life into solving this this problem via a company, right? So they we try to like weed out who just cares, sort of like what Diana told earlier, who cares more about the technology. Because I mean, this is fine, but there's places for this, and they're probably better served in academia or to continue doing basic R&D, and who sort of like cares about the problem the most. And yes, they're passionate about the technology and are really good at this, but they really want to leverage this. So in our case, normally it's a couple of people, maybe there's the first employee, there's almost never revenue, but there's some form of traction. So we want to sort of like, during the time that we engage with them, we want to see them progress from day to day, from week to week. But this can be by how they think about the market, how the product evolves, what kind of hires they make. It's very hard to give you specific metrics on this, but normally very early, there's no revenues, there isn't a clear customer strategy yet.
Thank you for that. I want to check with you as well. You mentioned previously that Innovo Venture Partners is pretty generalistic fund. Like, how are you estimating the risks that you are taking through the deep tech company investments, and how do you see those companies evolve? And is that a bit different if you take, like, I don't know, general business to business, like software company that you have been invested in?
Okay. So first of all, just to make perfectly clear, if it's like a deep tech company that needs, I don't know, like 5 years to get to, to your first commercial validation, it's probably not for us. So we are closer to the, as I said, like market and business setting is important to us. And then the question, deep tech versus, more regular SaaS company, is where the value of this company comes from. So, and there are companies that are in which the value is driven by the fact that can just build a great sales machine or marketing machine, and they manage to build revenues, and this is how they build their intrinsic values. And there are companies which are, doing that through developing something that is unique on the global scale, like really like unique. And then the part, like commercial part, is still important, but probably less important because there's a different value driver for this particular fund. When it comes to how it fits into our fund, we generally perceive that all the early stage investment, doesn't matter deep tech or not, they take a long time to develop. So what we would tend to do is we would probably be willing to invest in the earlier stages closer to the beginning of our fund. And while we are nearing end of investment period of our fund, and meaning that we'll have more or less like 5 years to exit, then we'll probably tend to stick to the projects that are further down the development line, right? But I think that, in deep tech, we, for example, we would invest in a company, we don't need a lot of revenue. It can be revenue from one POC, but we would like to see a product that is already at this stage, meaning it has something that is at least partly marketable, which means that I'm in a position where I probably skip the longest part where you don't know how long it's gonna take to develop something that will bring value to the end user. So this is also like a context that is worth having in mind, thinking about my answer here.
Thank you for that. Inga, sorry again, I'm going to switch the topic again right before you, but nevertheless, I know that you can handle that. So we have discussed the importance of the team. We discussed what are the basic criteria that the VCs consider in order to take on the investment decisions into deep tech sector and deep tech companies. And all of you kind of emphasized that basically the impact that the company is making, or the value that the company is creating, is the most essential part that you consider. So I would like to just get your like honest opinion. Like, what do you see are those business sectors that get like hugely affected or interrupted by deep tech startups? Like, where do you see that this technology or this new technology or enhanced and complicated and difficult technology might make a huge like difference in the nearest future? So what are the sectors that you feel are going to be interrupted by deep tech startups? Inga, the floor is yours.
Was that a question for me? Okay, well.
Absolutely, I want you to kick off with that.
Yeah, well, I would say that it can happen anywhere, and that is the magic of working with deep tech. You know, who's the first? It's like a race, and there are very many races in different areas going simultaneously. So obviously, you know, data and all sorts of data-related things, data processing things, not only in the area of IT, you know, AI, SaaS, IoT, any blockchain or anything, but also, you know, data in the areas like, I don't know, biology, like computational biology and a lot of many other things in all nano, micro, bio, and whatever areas. But it interestingly also pretty much related to computational powers and the powers related to data analysis. I believe in that strongly, but also all sorts of, you know, microfluids and all sorts of carbon, zero carbon, any sort of chemistry extinction in the agriculture and, you know, very many areas. Just it can happen absolutely anywhere. By the way, also in the social areas, I strongly believe that there's a lot of room for deep tech and changing inequalities and changing social sort of stratas. And obviously we are talking also about impact investment, and deep tech has also got a role to play there. So deep tech people, deep tech engineers have got imagination, and once they've got that, the breakthrough or anything like that, it can happen anywhere. So just who's the first? But on the other hand, I also, you know, working with both partners, that is the startups and the investors, I can see in very many cases that a lot of investors actually exhibit a kind of sunk cost trap. That is, you know, they start investing in one or another area, deep tech area, and then they focus on it. And then they are looking for additional investment in the companies in the area that they've mastered in order to protect, mainly to protect their prior investment, maybe to strengthen it. And that's how we get, somehow very organically, we get investors and we get funds that become specialized without any prior intention to be specialized. And then if we get strong investors, strong specialized investors in some specific areas, obviously those areas would have a larger potential for breakthrough innovation just because the capital would concentrate on them. So that's another side of the story, I believe.
Thank you. Jakob, what about you? Where do you see the revolution happening anytime soon?
I think that's kind of a little bit of a tricky question because things are moving quite fast. And I think as well as a VC, we try not to, I mean, we've got a very clear thesis of Web 3.0, which is that the internet is going to change fundamentally in the way it's operating. You're going to see, spent a couple of years in let's call it logistic and there's so many aspects that you can actually change. And I think as a VC, we of course got a thesis about blockchain, what that can do, decentralization, DApps in general. You can see NFTs and stuff like that. But I think back to Inga, I think the most important part is to be a little bit open-minded, because what we're looking into right now, that's where everyone is looking, right? We always try to look where people are not looking. But I think in general, what's exciting me is the opportunity of blockchain, machine learning, and AI, how you can optimize so many different sectors. I mean, say something that probably VCs don't think is that sexy, but I mean, accounting. I mean, imagine accounting, GovTech, how if you basically create a accounting system that everyone have to use based on a blockchain. Then you could automate taxes, right? That's not something that we're looking into, but just to give you an aspect of a technology that's not that you can apply right away. And that's the exciting part about deep tech, is you can take a technology and no one is actually looking that direction, then you apply it. So I think for me, it's the technology and the opportunity that it can change. We as well, when we're looking into companies, of course, we've got specific direction we're looking into, but we're really open-minded because we must admit, there's a reason why we're investors, right? But we're not the one out there grinding every night, looking into new. Of course, we're trying to educate ourselves all the time, but we're not the one grinding at the university hubs or having exciting lecture or reading all the new PhD. We're trying to do it, but we need to be at the places where people are doing it. So we try to be quite open-minded, but for sure, the Web 3.0 and the internet and protocol in general, decentralization is what's really exciting us.
Okay, cool. Markus, what about you? Do you have like some very specific topics or maybe sectors that you are very closely monitoring and where you see that, yes, the change is going to be happening and then deep tech companies are taking care of that?
Let me give you 4. Two of them are just on my wish list, but we don't have the resources and the expertise to be supporting founders in these areas. And 2 are actually areas we also sort of like tend to be, in our opinion, qualified at supporting teams. One is I'd love to see much more progress in the field of nuclear energy. I think it's by far the biggest shot we have to really get to net zero. And Germany obviously is a terrible example, my home country, for their 1980s stance on dealing with nuclear energy. So I'd like to see a lot more progress on both fission and fusion in that space. Second one, I think the world just realized how we all failed the dress rehearsal COVID-19. Despite all the horrors, COVID, basically we got away with a black eye, sort of like could have been much, much worse. And so I'm really hoping there's a lot of great folks in the field of synthetic biology to really help us prepare for the next, be it a natural or a man-made pandemic. And the good thing is if you prepare for one, you automatically do prepare for the other. But we at Sunfish aren't the right ones with our resources, at least for now, sort of like to be pushing these fields. The ones we do, we just made an investment in the cybersecurity space. I think the world is really not prepared to be guarding themselves against cyber attacks. And this is going to sort of like, this issue is going to grow exponentially when everything comes online. So cyber is one of the areas we're investing in. Our latest investment is in a company that's working on true random number generators that are going to be driven by physical processes, so not hackable by algorithms. And lastly, we're doing a lot in the medical space. And in particular, we're doing a lot in the diagnosis and prevention space. So one company is looking at Parkinson's diagnostics. One is working at reading EMG data. So we have bionics, and a third one, not exactly, but they're working on molecular retrosynthesis, so to help chemists develop drugs faster. So I would also like put this in the medical area.
Well, that's pretty precise. Like you named all those trending topics that are going to happen or that are relevant for your fund.
So you can see that it can happen anywhere, anything, anywhere, right? Any area. Okay.
I just want to go through quickly one topic, and I'm going to start with Tajana, you, because right now we see that it's the great time to be the deep tech entrepreneur, because a lot of different VC funds are being created. European Investment Fund is taking steps in order to grow more and more VC capabilities in different regions. There are very many public grants available for those companies in order to get started, in order to proceed in the TRL level, and so on. So I just want to get your perspective, like how are you positioning your venture capital fund, and do you see that there's going to be a bigger competition for those like deep tech deal flow? Because the capital is there, the amount of capital is increasing day by day. Do you see that the competition is getting fiercer?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say it depends on who will be creating the funds and who will be the managing teams behind the funds. Because in Poland we have different kinds of like funds that you, as you said, that which are supporting creating of new venture capital institutions. So we have Bridge Alphas, we have different from the PFR, so Polish Fund of Funds. So the Bridge Alpha funds are mainly supporting the R&D development. So I think like more and more people who are, because I think in the past, most of the managing teams behind the funds were coming from financial backgrounds and so on. But I think as we have more also entrepreneurs who are evolving from the technology, so more entrepreneurs, as they will be creating more funds, I hope there will be also more teams behind the funds who are not only bankers, but they have the support from different fields.
Engineers, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And marketing people.
Sorry, there is only like 5 minutes left for our panel, and I know that somebody out of this panel needs to be in a very important meeting sharp after the session. So I'm just gonna have only one really quick question to all the participants. And I just want you to give one like main recommendation for the deep tech companies that are there in the audience right now and that want to get ready to raise capital from the VC fund. So what is your recommendation? What should they have, like definitely have before they are entering your tour? Like what should they focus at? What should they take care of before entering your deal flow or pipeline? Let's start with Maciej, right? So are you ready?
Yes. So I will maybe repeat myself, but if I remember that technology is not the goal in itself, but it's only a means to an end, and they remember about it when they're talking with VCs, I think that it's going to help with their conversion and attracting them, because then they can show the whole vision behind solving the problem, not only focusing on technology which solves it.
Good. Inga, what is your recommendation, like the most essential recommendation for the companies here?
Maybe not most essential, but the first thing to think about when you are preparing to have a serious discussion with a VC fund, please research the VC fund. They all are very different. They have different visions. They have different values. They have different experiences, and they have different characters. And a VC fund would be, if they're interested in you, would be your partner, long-term partner. So be very careful in terms of who you would like to be friends with. So do your homework and research the VC fund before you talk to them.
Good. Markus, what about you? What is your recommendation for the early stage companies here?
Hang in there and don't believe the media. It's still insanely hard to get money. Yes, I know there's inflation coming and trillions being printed, and some of this is allocated to the venture asset class. But how much of this actually trickles down to great early stage startups in Poland? I think, yes, the numbers are growing, but it's still insanely hard, even for the most talented startups in Poland and Germany at the seed stage. Also, if they have PhD backgrounds and stuff like this, a lot of this stuff is not your typical toolbox stuff that VCs are yet used to. And I think just don't believe the media, because you always get the impression, oh, it's easier than ever. And if I only talk to 5 VCs and don't make it, I'm doing something wrong. No, everybody is still talking to 50 VCs, and hopefully they get 1 or 2 yeses at the very early stage when it comes to very technical teams.
So the conversion rate is still the same.
Yeah, it's still dramatically low, and fundraising, despite the word fun being in it, it sucks. It sucks for VCs raising a fund. It sucks for startups raising from investors. It is never fun, and you cannot outsource it, right? This is also one strategy we see in Poland. But at the early stage, you cannot have a placement agent who you hire to raise your Series C. I mean, this is something you might be able to do in the States with your Series C or D, but this doesn't work if you're raising your first 500K. It's going to take a lot of your time. It's going to be super frustrating, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but it's still a lot of hustle, and that hasn't changed.
Thank you. Jakob, what is your final quick recommendation?
Very quick. Don't prepare anything, just reach out. I think it's an important part to understand how a VC operate. It's different dots that we are connecting. It's as Inga mentioned, it's about get to know the founder. So I mean, at least some of the mistakes that I've done myself and seen out there is that people are really waiting till everything is perfect. So I think first of all, reach out. It could be as well just a reach out email. Hey, I'm working on an awesome project, or I'm XYZ. I would love to talk to you. What would you like to see? I mean, of course, having a pitch deck, having financial, having all the deals materials makes it better, but don't hesitate. Just go out there as fast as possible and get a connection and just say, hey, this is me. I got this crazy idea. I'm working on it. I would love to chat. And if they don't have time, say, what do you want to see, right? Because then you actually know what the VC want to see. So don't wait. Just go out there. Of course, the better material, the better. But just do it.
So,
reach out.
Yeah, Tajana, final word to you. What is your most essential recommendation?
Well, I think the others could pretty much said the most important stuff. So don't just focus on the tech. Be more open about what you're creating. Be more open with the VCs. Create relationships. Be more open with the market, with your potential customers. You don't have to wait till you finish the technology to share what is going to do. And I agree with Inga. Do due diligence of your investors. You are creating the partnership which is meant to last for years. So it has to be well prepared, and it's partnerships from both sides.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. So the outcome of our discussion is that you should be prepared, you should be patient, you should enter right doors, and you definitely need to do that at least 50 times in order to get like the needed amount of investment and fundraise successfully. So once again, thank you, Tajana. Thank you, Jakob, Marcus, Inga, Maciej. It has been a pleasure, and I hope it was relevant and interesting for the audience as well. I would like to conclude here, and we are going to see definitely with the teams during the Scale Up Champions program. So thanks, and stay tuned. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.